Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Morning light filtered through the large windows of the First National Bank of Charleston. The building, imposing and cold, exuded order and wealth, its walls covered in gleaming marble and its polished counters reflecting the faces of hurried customers. The employees, already in place since the opening, chatted in hushed tones about their usual routines, some laughing at the latest local news, others tapping away on their computers. It was then that a figure caught their attention. In the reflection of the marble, they saw him approaching, an old black man, bent with age, carrying a worn canvas bag, whose edges were frayed. His worn shoes clattered softly on the floor, and his threadbare coat seemed to belong to another era. His graying hair framed a face marked by life, but his eyes shone with an unusual gleam, a quiet intelligence mingled with an impenetrable determination. His name was Samuel Johnson, 72 years old, a retired mathematics teacher, known in his neighborhood for his wisdom, but also for his discretion. Few people would have imagined that he could shake up the daily routine of a bank with his mere presence. The first customers who noticed him couldn't help but smile mockingly. "Look at that old man with his backpack. He thinks he can just walk in here like that," exclaimed a young man in business attire. Laughter erupted, echoing through the spacious lobby. Employees exchanged knowing glances, some even pulling out their phones, ready to film what they thought was a ridiculous scene. But Samuel didn't react. He walked slowly, each step measured, each movement precise, as if following an invisible choreography. He paid no attention to the laughter or the jeers. His sole objective was the central counter, where he would place his bag and reveal the truth that no one had yet considered. Silence gradually fell as he approached. The laughter faded, replaced by a curiosity tinged with concern. Some customers began to whisper among themselves, "What's he going to do?" But no one had the slightest idea what Samuel had planned. When he placed the bag on the counter, the clinking of metals sounded like a warning. The worn canvas looked ordinary, almost fragile, but inside was something powerful and formidable, irrefutable evidence, documents and records that would expose the frauds and financial manipulations committed by the bank. The old professor looked up and, for the first time, a calm smile appeared on his face. He knew the moment had come. The moment when laughter would turn to regret, when mockery would become fear. And while the customers held their breath and the employees paled, Samuel Johnson was about to do what no one had dared imagine, to restore the truth to its rightful place, with patience, intelligence and unwavering calm. Samuel Johnson walked through the door of the First National Bank at precisely 10:05 a.m. The chimes announced his arrival, a familiar sound that, on that day, resonated like the beginning of an unexpected event. Each step he took on the marble floor seemed calculated, slow but sure, leaving behind a trail of curiosity and unease. As soon as he entered, the customers present couldn't help but notice him. Among them was Mark Benson, an arrogant young executive, who whispered to his colleague, "Look at that old man. He looks like he's going to rob us with that bag." The others laughed, some looking at their phones to film what they already imagined to be a ridiculous scene. Behind the counter, Linda Harper, the head cashier, frowned. She knew Samuel by sight, a respectable old man, never a problem, never a complaint. But the look of the worn canvas bag and his features marked by age triggered an unconscious alarm in her mind. She shook her head and murmured, "If he does something." The bank manager, Tommy Reese, then entered the hall. Tall and impeccably dressed, he looked confident and superior. He flashed a mocking smile and said, "Good morning, sir. Can I help you?" which sounded more like a challenge than an offer of service. Samuel didn't answer immediately. He placed the bag on the counter with almost military precision. The bag's impact with the surface produced a sharp thud that silenced the last murmurs and laughter. All eyes turned toward him. The customers, who just moments before had been laughing, suddenly felt a strange, almost palpable tension. Samuel stared at the director and said calmly, in a voice that allowed no interruption, "I'm here to show you something. I advise you to listen carefully." Tommy Reese raised an eyebrow, amused but slightly nervous. "Very well, sir, we're listening." But before the words had even left his mouth, Samuel began to slowly untie the bag. The deliberate nature of his movements, each measured gesture, seemed calculated to amplify everyone's attention. Bundles of documents and files piled up on the counter, already revealing that this bag was no ordinary one. A shiver ran through the room. The customers moved closer, some on tiptoe, others instinctively keeping their distance. Everyone wanted to see, but no one was prepared for what they were about to discover. Samuel looked up at the crowd, and in that simple look, a silent lesson was contained: never judge someone by their appearance. The laughter had disappeared, replaced by worry, curiosity, and fear. Samuel Johnson gently placed the last stack of documents on the counter. Customers and employees watched his every move with a mixture of curiosity and unease. The air, previously filled with stifled laughter, was now thick with almost palpable tension. Sweaty palms, shifty eyes, held breaths, everyone knew something unusual was happening. With a slow but determined gesture, Samuel opened a folder and took out a set of neatly stapled papers. Each page seemed ordinary at first glance: tables, figures, official letterheads. But when he spread them out in front of Tommy Rees and Linda Harper, the atmosphere changed radically. What is it?" stammered Tommy, trying to mask his nervousness behind a facade of control. Samuel did not answer immediately. He let a few seconds pass, allowing silence to hang heavy in the room, amplifying the dramatic effect. Then he calmly declared, "These are your accounts. The fictitious transfers, the frauds, the manipulations you thought were invisible, it's all here." Linda Harper paled. Her trembling fingers brushed against the papers. She realized then that it wasn't a joke or a fabrication. Samuel had, in that simple bag, with supporting evidence, years' worth of embezzlement that the bank had carefully concealed. The customers around began to murmur, some shocked, others in disbelief. How can an old man know all this? He must have recorded all of that. But no one dared approach yet, fearing to interrupt the unfolding of this extraordinary moment. Samuel slowly raised his head and looked the director straight in the eyes. "Your laughter may have surprised me, but now I advise you to listen carefully. What you take for a simple old bag contains the truth you fear most." Tommy Rees felt fear rising. For the first time, his usual confidence wavered. His hands tightened on the counter, and his gaze slid over the customers, who were watching the scene with a mixture of disbelief and unease. Samuel continued, placing specific documents under Tommy's gaze: evidence of fictitious transfers, rigged accounts, forged signatures. Each piece of paper that fell from the bag seemed to have been placed there with strategic precision, like a key piece in a puzzle of justice. A murmur rippled through the room. The customers, who had laughed just moments before, were now hanging on the old man's every move. Some covered their mouths, unable to believe what they were seeing. The employees, meanwhile, exchanged glances, aware that their past arrogance had just backfired spectacularly. Samuel, in a calm but firm voice, concluded, "You judged an old man by his appearance, you laughed at me. Today, you will understand that wisdom and patience are worth more than youth and arrogance." Silence reigned for several seconds before Tommy Rees attempted to speak, his voice betraying his panic. "Sir. We." But Samuel didn't give him time to finish. He continued to place, one by one, the most compromising documents on the counter, revealing that nothing could be hidden this time. The customers held their breath. The bag, simple and worn on the outside, had become the symbol of the total reversal of roles. The one who had been mocked now held power and truth in his hands. The bank lobby had become a silent theater where every move by Samuel Johnson seemed orchestrated. The customers held their breath, some whispering amongst themselves, others frozen, unable to look away. The laughter that had erupted at the entrance had completely vanished. Samuel slowly raised his eyes towards Tommy Rees, the bank manager, who was visibly turning pale. Every gesture of the old man amplified Tommy's anxiety. The bundles of documents spread out on the counter left no doubt: the bank had been caught red-handed committing fraud, and the management's responsibility was directly exposed. "You thought you could mock an old man without consequences," Samuel said in a calm but implacable voice. You thought your arrogance and laughter could hide the truth. You were wrong. Linda Harper, the cashier, was trembling slightly. She had always respected Samuel, but the revelation of the documents left her stunned. She glanced at Tommy, who was avoiding her gaze. Fear was now palpable, like a dark cloud hanging over their heads. A young employee, Jake Turner, he tried to take the initiative by approaching the counter. "Sir, I think there's been a mistake." Samuel fixed him with a piercing gaze. "There is no mistake. Everything you see is true. You chose to laugh at the appearance of an old man, and now it is time to take responsibility for your choices." Tommy tried to speak again. "Listen, we can sort this out, discreetly." But Samuel did not move, his voice remaining calm but full of firmness. "There will be no discreet settlement. Your fraudulent activities can no longer be hidden. I have contacted the relevant authorities. Everything you have tried to conceal will now be publicly examined." The customers, silent witnesses to the scene, began to murmur. Some took out their phones, no longer to mock, but to document the confrontation. The tension rose. The bank employees were in a state of panic. Some tried to gather papers to hide, others looked at Samuel as if he were a judge ready to condemn their arrogance. Samuel then took a particular bundle of papers and placed it in front of Tommy. "Here are the fictitious transfers you orchestrated to conceal your losses. Every signature, every date, every amount, it's all here. Your explanations won't change anything." Tommy straightened up, his trembling hands gripping the counter. For the first time, he felt the gravity of the situation. Samuel, the old man he had judged weak and ridiculous, now held the power, and this power was not a whim, it was the truth laid bare. Samuel concluded, his gaze sweeping across the entire room. "You mocked, you laughed, you judged. Today, the mockery has turned against you. And I assure you that those who believe they are superior because of their youth or their position will soon discover that respect and justice cannot be bought, they must be earned." An absolute silence fell, broken only by the rustling of papers and the hesitant breathing of those present. The confrontation was total, the mocker had become the victim, and the victim, the architect of a silent but implacable justice. Silence reigned in the hall of the First National Bank, interrupted only by the rustling of documents that Samuel Johnson spread out on the counter. Each page he placed revealed a scandal bigger than the last: fictitious transfers, rigged accounts, forged signatures, financial manipulations, everything was there, organized with almost surgical precision. The customers, witnesses to the scene, were now hanging on the old man's every move. What had begun as simple curiosity had turned into utter shock. The laughter of before had given way to incredulous whispers. Some covered their mouths, others dropped their phones, unable to capture the magnitude of what they were seeing. Tommy Reese, the director, was visibly turning pale. His hands trembled on the counter, his thoughts swirling in a whirlwind of fear and panic. How could he have discovered all this? How did he gain access to these documents? He couldn't find any answers. Samuel, unperturbed, raised his eyes and fixed the room with a clear and piercing gaze. "You laughed at me. You judged an old man by his appearance. You thought your lies would remain hidden. And now, everything you feared is exposed." Linda Harper, the cashier, felt her heart pound. She had always respected Samuel, but she never would have imagined that this old man she saw every week could orchestrate such a demonstration. It's all true," she murmured in disbelief. Jake Turner, the young employee, tried to move a file, but Samuel held him back with a firm gesture. "Don't touch anything. The truth cannot be erased by fear." The customers nearby, who had initially laughed and whispered, were now moving closer, fascinated by the unfolding scene. One of them murmured, "This bag, it doesn't just contain papers, it contains the truth about the entire bank." Samuel continued to methodically reveal the evidence. Each document that fell from the bag exposed not only management's fraudulent activities but also past attempts to cover them up. The employees were now faced with the undeniable truth: their arrogance and derision had led to this very moment, and there was no way to avoid it. Then, with a final gesture, Samuel placed the key piece of evidence in the bag, a digital record of transactions and internal communications. Tommy Rees went completely pale. Every word, every number, every action was recorded. The bank had no escape. The murmurs in the room turned into stifled cries of surprise and fear. The fascinated customers realized that what they had taken for a simple, ridiculous scene was in fact a masterclass in respect and justice. Samuel, completely calm, looked at Tommy Rees one last time and said, "Today, you understand the difference between laughing out of ignorance and facing the truth with courage. Those who judge before knowing always end up regretting it." And as panic spread among the employees and customers became aware of the scale of the fraud, Samuel Johnson, the old man with the mysterious bag, now held the whole scene under his control, master of a spectacular turnaround that no one had seen coming. The hall of the First National Bank, the room was plunged into an almost surreal silence. The customers, initially incredulous, murmured amongst themselves, some pulling out their phones to document what had just happened. The laughter of the past had completely vanished. The bank employees, for their part, were frozen with fear and shame. Tommy Rees, the director, clenched his fists on the counter, unable to utter a word. The documents spread out before him revealed fraud and financial manipulations he knew he could never justify. Linda Harper and Jake Turner looked at Samuel with a mixture of respect, fear, and guilt. Samuel, calm and implacable, placed the last piece on the counter, a hard drive containing all the digital evidence, irrefutable proof of several years of wrongdoing. "You thought I would be weak, that you could mock me and continue your abuse with impunity," he said firmly. "Today, your actions are visible to everyone. And justice is coming." At that precise moment, police sirens wailed outside. Samuel had alerted the financial authorities and the police before even entering. The inspectors arrived quickly, and the employees had no choice but to hand over the documents and answer their questions. The panic escalated further when the police officers began taking photographs and notes. The customers, witnesses to the event, moved closer to see Samuel in action. The man they had ridiculed just minutes before was now a symbol of justice and wisdom. The murmurs turned into silent admiration. He planned all of this, incredible. What courage, what composure. Samuel slowly packed away his bag, which had changed its status in everyone's perception. From a simple, worn canvas bag, it had become the instrument of truth and retribution. He turned to the crowd and said gently, "Those who laugh too quickly forget that patience, preparation, and respect for others are worth more than arrogance and mockery." Tommy Rees lowered his eyes in shame, while Linda and Jake, though nervous, understood Samuel's lesson. The authorities took control of the situation, and the bank now had to face the legal and media fallout from its actions. Samuel left the bank, walking slowly in the morning light. He didn't look back. Each step seemed to leave behind a clear lesson: wisdom and respect are not measured by age, appearance, or position, but by the ability to see the truth and confront it. Customers and passers-by, witnesses to this scene, were still murmuring, "What a man, what courage." And in the silence that followed, the bank lobby, once filled with mockery, had been transformed into a place of respect and justice. Samuel Johnson, the old man with the mysterious bag, had accomplished what few men dare, to return power to the hands of truth.